All right, good morning. The meeting has started and the meeting is recording. My name is Luke Thornton. I am your WebEx host for today. If you have any technical issues, you can chat me directly. The chat button is down at the bottom right corner. Make sure you select to send it to the host, and then I'll be able to help you with any of your technical issues. If you have questions for any of our presenters today, make sure your chat feature is set to everyone so that our host will be able to see the questions. And without any more boring technical stuff, I will hand this over to Gretchen Lopez. Gretchen, you are muted. Gretchen, you are muted.
There we go. All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the December meeting of the Seniors Council of Douglas County. You've already met our WebEx host, Luke, who will assist us during our session. And it's through the generous support of the county and our county commissioners that we're able to come to you today. We'll be sharing several important phone calls and links to various websites in the next few minutes, so it might be a good idea to have a pen and paper handy or your cell phone in order to take photos of the slides that will appear on your screen. I find using the camera option on my cell phone the quickest and easiest way to capture information I might need later. And then, of course, you always know where it's at. It's in your phone and the dog can't eat the piece of paper. As the holidays draw near, it's very important to take a break every once in a while from the hustle and bustle of the many tasks of the season. And we appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning to learn about a unique approach to a balanced training program which is fun and effective. And I know because I use it myself. However, before we begin the presentation, I have a few brief announcements. First, a gentle reminder that Medicare's open enrollment period ends in just a few short days on next Tuesday, December 7th. If you haven't quite decided which plan is right for you in 2022, you can still contact Medicare or a SHIP counselor for help at the contact information I'm going to give you. The Medicare toll-free hotline is open 24/7. So if you can't sleep at night and you want to talk to somebody at Medicare, you can call them at 1-800-MEDICARE. Easy to remember. And the SHIP helpline is operational tomorrow, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday during normal business hours. And their number is 1-888-696-7213. That's 888-696-7213. Now, the Seniors Council will be continuing our virtual meetings during the first half of 2022, and we're hoping to reinstate our in-person meetings the second half of next year. Of course, this depends on the health precautions recommended at the time, and we'll keep you posted accordingly. On another note, some folks have been asking us about our signature educational event, Vintage and Vibrant. We are planning an in-person event in September of 2023. I know that seems like a long way off, but this day-long event requires lots of planning, and with the pandemic still affecting the details of hosting a large event, we'll need the extra time to ensure a safe and enjoyable experience for all of you. And now I'll turn the meeting over to Tiffany Curtin, our education chair.
Thank you, Gretchen, for those opening announcements. First, as you may know, I am the Community Services Specialist with Douglas County Libraries, and I wanted to see if you all were aware that Douglas County Libraries has online craft classes that are available to you for free with your library card. You can access these easily by clicking on our homepage on our website on the icon that says Create Warm Holidays, and find out about all the crafts that you can learn to create on your own or as a project to do with your family members. So next, I would like to announce the upcoming events for the next 3 months of our education series. our January 6th presentation, we will have a year in review of what we have covered in 2021 and what we have all learned from the Seniors Council of Douglas County. On February 3rd, we will see Brandon Davis again, and he will be sharing with you the importance of and the role of the Senior Patrol for reporting Medicare fraud and why that is important to you all and to us entirely as a society. And on March 3rd, we will be having another science presentation with Dr. Susan Bailey. She will be sharing the science of space travel and how space travel affects aging. So many of us will probably not be able to go into space like Captain Kirk did recently, but we're looking forward to learning more about that research and in that presentation. And now I would like to introduce to you our speaker today, Dr. Nathan Estrada. And Nathan is, oops, I lost my file for his description right now. Sorry about that. So Nathan Estrada, you is, Nathan is with Nymbl Science and is committed to preventing falls and health, and he will present to you the science behind Nymbl Science and the app that you may have seen advertisements for and that Gretchen mentioned that she has been using to help preventing falls and keeping us all healthy and active as we age. So I will turn this over to you, Nathan, and thank you very much for presenting to us today.
Tiffany, it is a pleasure. You could have just said Nathan Estrada, that would have been fine. I'm actually really excited. This is kind of my passion in life, which is empowering people to understand what they can do to manage their own problems. As a healthcare provider, we're instructed and indoctrinated to tell people what they should do, but the reality of it is no one does what they should. They do what they want. So my goal today is to empower everyone listening with the things that they can do and to create a little bit of want in that cycle of what can we accomplish together. So I will be showing some slides. Let me bring them up, and then we will kind of go from there. Let's go. Beautiful. Let me get full screen. And someone just give me a thumbs up or a yes that I am full screen and good to go.
Yes.
Awesome. It was like the voice of God coming above. I appreciate that. So the first thing I want to talk about is, and we're not going to have a lot of bad news in this presentation, but it is important to know kind of how big the problem is. If we had a polling feature, this actually be a good time to do it. But 1 out of every 4 older adults falls each year is what we hear a lot. In fact, the CDC says this quite frequently, and a lot of the national leaders. This is actually fully not true. 1 out of 4 older adults are willing to talk about their falls or willing to report it. It's not something that we take great pride in talking about. It's almost like a scarlet letter a lot of the times, to where we feel like if we're open and honest about a fall, that there could be some other consequences. Children suddenly get very involved in our decisions and different things like that, and it doesn't feel good. And about half of older adults are willing to talk about a past fall with their doctor. So when we go to our doctor, we tend to show off rather than being honest about things. It's actually 1 in 3 older adults fall each year. And when we fall twice per year, if you want to know, on average. So going from that perspective, I really want to focus on what makes up balance and what do we know decreases fall risk? What do we control? What do we not control? And one of the key aspects of that is we first have to understand actually how we balance in general. And so balance is a combination of 3 senses, because if you don't sense the fall, you don't react. And we're going to be talking about how balance is actually a reflex in general. And so these three senses all come together inside the brain, but not on the top of the brain where you think. It's actually in the little cauliflower in the back called the cerebellum. And the cerebellum is where all your reflexes live. You're probably familiar with some reflexes. A good example of that is your withdrawal reflex from a hot stove. When you touch a hot stove, a lot of people believe that they think about pulling their hand away because it's hot, and that's actually not true either. What happens is the sensor in your fingertip says that something's warm. It sends it to your cerebellum. Your cerebellum pulls off the hand and then tells your awareness, by the way, that was hot. If we waited for us to make a decision on pulling our hand, then we'd actually burn ourselves. Balance is the same way. These three systems or senses send a signal to the cerebellum that we're losing our balance. The cerebellum gives like a reaction to step or to grab or some kind of recovery. And then we do that. And then after we've stepped, we have an anxiety response of, oh my gosh, I almost just fell. Hopefully almost and not actually did fall. And the first of those sensations is joint sensation. And just like anything in medicine, we have to give easy concepts really hard names. And the really hard name for that is proprioception. And what that means is that our ability to sense our hand in space or our legs and hips and ankles. A good example is if someone put a piece of paper behind me, I can still grab the paper because I can feel my hand in space. I don't even have to see it. So I can use those sensors in my ankles, knees, and hips to let me know where my weight's shifting and overall kind of what's going on there. Then the next aspect of it is vision. And we all know that we use vision pretty acutely for balance. If you've ever tried to balance in the dark. And so it's the lower the light you have, the less visual acuity you have, and then it's dangerous, which is why a lot of people fall at dusk and dawn. And it's not necessarily that there's no light, it's large transitions of light that are really disorienting. I like to remind you, if you've ever switched on the bathroom light and it was pure dark to pure light, it almost throws you off your feet because of that disorientation. The same thing happens in other aspects of life. And it's really associated with a specific reflex called the VOR. And the reason why I call it the VOR, because the real name for that is the visual ocular reflex. And what that means is our ability to track an object, even though we're moving our head. And so if you've ever spun or you've been on a Ferris wheel or some of the old playground games and apparatus, looking at a stable object makes you less dizzy. And the reason why it does that is because you have the ability to track an object even though your body's moving. The last part of the senses is the vestibular. So vestibular is a fancy name for the inner ear. And the inner ear is this little thing about the size of your pinky that senses all the roller coaster effects. So gravity, rotation, acceleration. So all the things that make life fun when you're moving are actually sensed in your inner ear. And so think about that. Your joints, you can feel yourself shifting to your feet. You can see an object that should be stable. It's moving farther or closer to you. And your inner ear says you're accelerating. Well, those three senses then are telling your brain that you're about to fall. And then tell the cerebellum, and the cerebellum steps. So those are the sensations that make that up. Now, the hard part about that is none of those three sensations improve with age. And as a result of that, they tend to be blunted or decreased. And so we don't feel ourselves losing our balance. And if you don't feel yourself losing your balance, you actually don't react at all. Which is why a lot of older adults, when they fall like trees. You go and you ask someone, well, what happened? They go, I don't know. The first alarm I felt was hitting the ground. And that's the problem. And that's also why people that can be incredibly strong and well coordinated still fall. Because if you don't sense it, you don't react at all. So then the next aspect, let's look at a cartoon picture of the inner ear. I think it's a miracle of kind of engineering when you have this. So you have these three semicircular canals. And they act as like gimbals on a plane. And we actually pilot a plane navigation using a very similar setup. So it's an incredible thing. Like I said, it's about the size of the tip of your pinky. And what happens in these little circular canals, they're like hula hoops with water in them. And on the inside lining of that hula hoop there's little hairs. And as the water flows past the hair, it bends it a little bit. And the more it bends the hair, the more you know you're moving. So if you move really fast, that fluid shifts really fast, and then the hairs move further, and you can then know degree or acceleration of that. Now, if you've ever had vertigo where you turned over in bed and the room was spinning, well, it's because instead of having this wonderful fluid in this circle, sometimes you get these little crystals or rocks. So instead of gently brushing against those hairs, it flattens them out immediately. And the brain perceives that as maximum speed. And if you have one ear that thinks you're moving at a maximum speed and the other ear that doesn't think you're moving at all, well, that's perceived as spinning. And that can really make you sick. There's also another beautiful thing in the middle of it, to where it has this almost like loaf of jelly. I like to think of a loaf of bread because you can think of it sliding side to side, and has these weighted crystals on top. And those weighted crystals, when you tilt your head to the side, gravity pulls them to the side. And that's actually how you know you're crossing the middle, is because those crystals are flipping back and forth. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but you can only feel yourself falling forwards and backwards if the head crosses over neutral. So if you're here and you fall back this way, well, then your head crosses over neutral, and then those crystals flip to the other side, letting you know that you're falling that direction. Here's the problem there. What if your head's forward and you fall forward? Well, you don't sense the fall at all in your inner ear, at least from a gravity perspective, because for all intents and purposes, if your head's not upright, you've already fallen forward, and you can't fall more forward according to that sensor. So super interesting. Then the next part about it is vision. About half of our brain is devoted to interpreting what we see. That's how important vision is. But it's really interesting. It's not your forward vision that helps you balance. It's actually your side vision or your peripheral vision. And here's how it works. Is if you fall forward, what you saw next to you leaves your visual field. If you fall backwards, what you see next to you actually gets further into your visual field. And that's how the brain knows whether you're going forward or backwards. And this is a really deceiving sensation. If you've ever been in a car that you're parked, but then someone else reverses behind you or next to you, your vision and your periphery sees them moving backwards, and then your brain goes, you must be moving forward. And it's a really weird thing, even though you can clearly sense you're not moving. And what that tells us is that vision can override your other senses. So if your brain, or if you see something moving, you feel movement, even though sometimes it's not happening. That can be a real problem if you become visually dominant for balance, because we can't always trust our vision for a bunch of different reasons. When it overrides our balance, it's interesting, because if you think of your periphery, right? What if you have wide-brimmed glasses? Well, then suddenly you can't see. It's like blinders on the side. And so wide-brimmed glasses actually decrease balance, because they decrease your ability to see in your periphery. So just as a word of warning, some very fancy glasses might look great, but not be so good for your balance. And then, of course, joints. So our joint sensation has to do with how much a joint moves, and it's actually an interesting mechanism of stretching. So if this is my knee, when it bends, the front of the knee stretches, and when it straightens, the back of the knee stretches. And it's the stretching that we feel. And these little sensors called Golgi tendon sensors, and what they do is they can tell me how far I'm moving. Well, if you have arthritis, there's less joint space, so you have to move farther before those tissues are stretched. So you literally have to move more before your brain feels it. That's why arthritis and joint problems make balance worse, not to mention the pain associated with them turns off muscles and slows down their activation, which makes it harder to react. So the next thing, now that we understand these are the three systems, that are three senses that come together, and when they come together, we sense balance. And when we're losing our balance, they tell the cerebellum. The cerebellum then tells the muscles to move, and we step. Then I'm going to pivot a little bit, and I'm going to go, okay, let's talk about exercise and aging just briefly, because I'm about to say a lot of things that might not be consistent with other things that you've heard. And it's important to know that what I'm talking about is probably not what other people have been talking about. And here's why. When we exercise, there's all kinds of different goals. Some exercise helps with coordination and movement, for balance, for heart health, lung health, strength. Sometimes we exercise just for social engagement. Today, I'm talking about the exact types of exercises that help balance. So please know, I'm not saying not to do other types of exercises. I'm just saying that this is what improves balance and that the other things don't improve balance. But please, I want you to exercise in a multiple domain way. That way we don't get confused about that. So to improve the balance reflex, which is what makes up balance, we have to improve those three sensations. Well, it's actually not quite that simple because there's another barrier to our balance. And what it is we have to have the ability to do multiple things at the same time. In other words, you have to be able to walk and talk. This is such an important aspect of balance that we actually have a test for it called the walk and talk test, where if you ask 100 older adults to walk, and then you say, have a conversation, all the people that have to stop walking to talk are all your fallers. And the reason for that is, if your cognitive or your brain's ability to do multiple things gets too narrow and suddenly you can't do multiple things at the same time, it has to make a really uncomfortable decision that when I'm distracted, do I focus on the distraction or do I focus on my balance? Because your brain can only do one of those things at the same time. And so sometimes what we find in healthcare is a patient will come to us and say, Nathan, I'm really struggling to do this and that at the same time. And we flippantly say, well, don't do that. That is the worst advice we could ever give. If you struggle to do two things at once, it's actually crucial that you regain that ability because it's a primary predictor of future fall risk. And if you have to think about your movement, then you actually are a faller. In other words, walking is a reflex. And so if you have to think about every step you take, you're not balancing at all anymore. And if you ever do get distracted, you will fall. So it's not just a matter of having great balance sensation, but the brain has to have the ability to do multiple things at the same time. And there's only a few ways you can train that. And we're going to talk about that today. So this three-stage process is what we're talking about, which is the alarm, the sensation of the three, the plan, which is your cerebellum, and then the movement, which is what your cerebellum tells the body to do. And so if you're going to improve that process, you have to mimic the situation of which that would work naturally. In other words, a lot of times you'll go to a balance class and people will tell you to think or focus on your balance. That has zero ability to improve your balance. Because if you're thinking about your balance, it makes the assumption that you can think about your balance when you're falling. And we already established that you don't even know you're falling until after you react, not before you react. So you have to then treat the brain and the body together. And a lot of times we call that dual task balance training. And dual task balance training simply means this. While you're moving, you need something to distract your brain. So walking and talking is a great example. It's if you can hold a conversation and walk, your cerebellum is controlling your walking and your executive function is controlling your talking. And that is a good thing because you always want your reflex to be ready to work, not something you have to think about. Another important aspect of balance is that if you think of balance as a balance class that you do once a month, well, that's kind of a weird mantra or thought. And I like to tell people that balance is closer to nutrition than it is strength. And here's what I mean by that. You wouldn't have one great meal a year or a month and say, I have a great diet. No, it's the little things you do every day that really determines the quality of your diet. Balance is the same way. You need to train your balance a little bit every day. And what I mean by a little bit is our research shows that if you train your balance 10 minutes, 3 times a week, you can significantly improve your balance over time. And it's not just maintaining, you can significantly improve it because everyone can improve their balance. And that's the first kind of myth that I always like to remind people is balance is a trainable thing that regardless of how good or bad it is, you can always get better at it. It's a kind of a time invested sport, as I like to say. Another myth is that people think falls are normal, and there is nothing normal about falls. Most people don't fall. In other words, only 1/3 of older adults fall. That seems like a big number, but that means 2/3 didn't. So don't convince yourself that falling is a normal thing or a normal part of aging. It happens more frequently, but it doesn't mean it's normal. And the last aspect of the myths I'd like to bust is most falls are fully preventable. In other words, they're within our control to make sure they don't happen. And it's really intriguing to me. If you do a survey of 100 people who recently found, you ask them what happened, they always say something in the environment made me fall. Which is why one of the questions on there is, did you trip over your dog? It is crazy how often someone blames their dog or their grandchild for getting in their feet and stumbling and falling, when actually you should be able to tolerate that and react in time anyway. So if we have this dual task balance training and really working on the balance reflex, what that means is that that ability to move and recover is available no matter what else is going on in your life. So if you're in a traditional balance class, everyone's standing on one foot, thinking about what their ankles, knees, and hips are doing. Historically, we thought that improved balance, and what we found is that it has almost zero impact on functional balance. And so general exercise has never been shown to improve balance. So by you walking, by you doing other things, that in itself does not improve balance. So there's no amount of 5 or 6 miles a day even that you can walk to make your balance better. You have to do balance training. And that's an important aspect. And balance training requires both a brain challenge and a physical challenge together. So what really matters in that on that brain side? So there's a great study of superagers, and superagers are people that have incredible cognitive ability well into their 90s or even as centenarians. And we did this study and we thought, well, the best thing that we could do to improve brain function is send people back to get a graduate degree. So we actually paid for a group of people to go get a graduate degree and go back to school because we thought that mental stimulation would really be healthy for brain, memory, cognition, and bandwidth. And we found that only some of them improved. And that was really disheartening in science. We go, but we gave them this great intervention, which is this challenge, and the brain only on some people adapted. Here's what we found. The people that got a degree in something they were already good at, so an engineer getting a PhD in engineering, a writer getting a graduate degree in writing, had almost zero benefit for cognitive ability. So what we found is that you actually have to have novelty. You have to have variety to challenge the brain. So if you were an engineer and you got a degree in history, it had a significant improvement on brain health. And so we have to think about the same thing for balance. You can't do the same thing all the time and expect it. So in other words, once you get good at something, you have to do something else. And then once you get good at that, you have to do something else. So any program that's linear or just has you do the same thing all the time is not going to be effective long-term for balance. The word that in science is called neuroplasticity, or the ability for your brain to reform things. And there's also a misconception that older adults can't recover brain tissue or kind of neuronal growth. And what we found is that as you age, you have the same capability of adapting in the brain, but there's more things that slow it down or inhibit that ability as we age. So it's not a lack of capability, it's the environment that comes in, and different disease states that can slow that down, or different biochemicals in the brain. But the capability is always there. And I always like to remind people that function trumps all. Balance is not a back flip. It's actually just a step, right? It's a weight shift. It's a grabbing of something. And so if you can do functional movements while your brain is doing something else, you're going to really win. And it's the little things we do every day, which is why behaviors are the win. So then let's talk about the body, because historically we've always treated balance as a strength problem. And the world's most foremost program for balance training is almost wholly strength. It's called the Otago program. There's some good colleagues of mine in New Zealand. I just completed the world's largest fall prevention study outside of a hospital system, and we had 15,000 older adults. Someday I might actually be able to share that because it's such a great study. But so we've always assumed that someone's weakness slowed down their movement, and then that movement slowing down caused people to fall, and that's actually shown to be fully false. People that are weak can have great balance, and people that are strong can have terrible balance. The reason why this became such a pervasive myth is because when people are weak, they fall more frequently or are injured more frequently. But people that are weaker also have more frailty. They tend to have worse bone health. They tend to have least amount of activity. And so it wasn't the weakness that caused the increased risk. It was the lack of mobility and stimulation that would have maintained balance that increased their risk. What we found is that internationally, there's probably a few hundred studies on strength and balance training. If you are going to improve your balance using strength, it takes 6 to 8 months of 90 minutes a week to have a measurable impact on balance. And even half of those studies showed that balance didn't improve anyway. In other words, you can't simply strength train your way, because balance is a distinct skill and you have to work on balance training to improve balance. And you can't go this roundabout way of just simply increasing strength. So this is my kind way of saying, if you think your strength training class is improving your balance, you're wrong. The next aspect of it is, well, let's go back to the brain. So we talked about the brain has to have novelty and variety. Well, the reason why that's so impactful is because we know that as brain health declines, fall rate goes up. It's a direct correlation. And the reason for that is cognitive bandwidth, right? And so people with dementia fall far more frequently than any other population outside of major medical conditions like Parkinson's. And so if you, regardless of brain health, have the patience and the tolerance to train simple cognitive games, even if they're simpler than you would think they need to be, along with movement, you can still improve your balance even with mild cognitive decline. So don't think that different cognitive deficits or brain deficits preclude you or exclude you from balance training. It just means that you have to have different levels of challenges. And universally in research, when we look at balance training, if you do a brain challenge by itself and you measure balance, if you do a physical challenge by itself and you measure balance, both of those have nearly equivocal or equal outcomes. Because remember, balance is a brain challenge before it's a physical one. And when you do both at the same time, it's universally better. What I mean by that is balance improves far more quickly if you do a brain and body challenge at the same time, walking and talking. And what we found in our first research is we found that the gold standard measure balance, which is a force plate, and you're looking at someone's center of gravity. And the more that center of gravity moves, the less stable they are. Well, after 21 days of doing Nymbl, that sway area decreased by 67%, which means that people had more control of their body. And when they did move, they were able to control the speed of that movement, and the speed decreased by 30%. When you have a farther distance to go and you're going slower through that distance, that means the time you have to react expands. And when you have more time to react, you have greater capability to step, to recover, which is why people that used to stumble and fall now stumble and catch themselves after doing dual task balance training. So then we look at some other things. Now, a lot of us are very familiar with the international or national guidelines of how much exercise to get. And a lot of times people go, well, Nathan, I do 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, which is what the government tells me to do, so I'm already covered. Pat yourself on the back. Well, you're not. And because what we talked about is general exercise has never been shown to improve balance. And when you look at that, almost no one understands what moderate intensity is. So you look at that moderate intensity aspect of it. Moderate intensity is defined as if you can hold a healthy conversation while doing the exercise, it is not moderate. In other words, it's too easy. So think of that. You have to be having a hard time talking for that to be a healthy exercise, which for most of us, we don't achieve that threshold. And there's almost zero evidence to show that low intensity exercise has a cardiovascular or pulmonary or heart or lung health benefit. You have to have moderate intensity. So you have to challenge your body. And a lot of people underestimate what that means. But balance and walking, gait's another word for walking, require reflexive training. So I'm asking you to do balance training and strength training so that you can improve your body's health, your lung, your heart, and your brain health, and work on balance training so that you can have the right reflexes. When you put those together, that's really when you have a great synergy of decreasing fall risk. And what we found is that we reduce falls by about 50% using that strategy. That's huge, because what that means is that we reduced fall-related medical care by 35%. And when you look at that aspect of it, if you are hospitalized for a fall-related, or if you have a fall-related hospitalization, only 2/3 of those people survive 3 years. That's how bad that hospitalization can be for your overall longevity. So training the balance and training that reflex takes brain and body together, along with slowly allowing the body and the brain to learn how to do two things at once effectively. So thinking and moving without one interacting or impairing the other. A lot of times we like to think of an in-person balance class, and there are a lot of really great programs. Colorado has two main ones, Matter of Balance, and Matter of Balance has far more to do with fear of falling than it does with balance. And then you have like Stepping On, which is kind of this comprehensive program, a little bit of balance training, a lot of education. And one of the issues that we have is before the technology was around, is we relied on clinicians to do balance training. If you go to a physical therapist, your balance will improve. But it's really interesting. What we found is the home exercise program has almost no impact on balance. And it really kind of mystified us for almost a decade. And what we forgot is that the reason why balance training in the physical therapy clinic was so helpful is because you were always dual task balance training. You were distracted by the environment, by the cueing. Could you imagine me being your PT? I would never shut up, and it would just be exhausting emotionally to exercise around me, but you'd still be doing dual tasking. Well, if I sent you home with a piece of paper, then it just became exercise. You lost that dual tasking, and it didn't improve balance. In fact, balance decreased even though people participated in the exact exercise that the physical therapist asked them to do. So we saw people's balance go up and then go down. We treat them again, and then we had this cyclical cycle to where we were constantly seeing the same people for the same problem. We weren't having permanence. And so what we found is that if we could take that dual tasking and put it into a smart device like a phone or a tablet, we could reproduce the clinical outcome in the home. It was also much more scalable. Frankly, we can't afford in the United States to send me to everyone's house. And so that's why we started really working on how can we put this on a smart device or a phone or a tablet. Another aspect of it is so crucial that when you look at behaviors that you're willing to do, there's this amazing psychological trigger. Number one, all of us like to do things that are fun. If you don't like exercise, you better find something that you do like that improves your balance. Okay. And a great example of that is I always like to think of Tai Chi. Tai Chi is a wonderful mechanism to improve balance because what is it doing? It's a dual task challenge. It's telling you to focus on your arm movements while your legs are moving underneath you. That is a dual task balance program, which is why Tai Chi improves balance. But if you don't like Tai Chi, don't choose Tai Chi to improve your balance because you won't do it. You won't participate in it long enough. And most of us like it to be fun. And brain games tend to be fun, which is why we partner a brain game like a puzzle with a movement. And there's also something really interesting is if it takes 120 minutes a week, less than 1 in 800 people are willing to do it in the United States. And the reason why I know that is because 1 in 800 older adults have ever done an evidence-based balance class. So we know that no one does it, but we keep on designing these programs that work. But if no one's willing to do it, it doesn't matter. So we don't allow anything in our program to go more than 10 minutes a day, because we know that you won't do more than 10 minutes a day over any long period of time, because I won't do anything more than 10 minutes a day. I don't exercise 150 minutes of moderate intensity all the time either. So what's the right fit for you when it comes to balance training? Well, it really depends on your goals. If you need to do something in your home, Nymbl would be a great solution there. It's fully covered by the state of Colorado. We're actually their evidence-based program. And there's 2 ways to enroll in that. You can just download Nymbl training on your Apple or Android device, or you can go and enroll at co.fallsfree.com. And I'll put that a little bit later. So that's in your home. If you want to leave your home, please do. If you want to exercise in the community, I want you to sign up for Matter of Balance or Stepping On. Both are great programs. And so some of them are different outcomes. Like I said, Nymbl improves balance and balance behaviors. Matter of Balance works on fear. So if you have a real anxiety with your fear of falling, I want you to try to sign up for Matter of Balance. If you're confident, don't waste your time with Matter of Balance, because that's not the outcome that they're working on. They wouldn't be a good match for you. Symptom reduction, we look at, if you go to a strength training class and it kills your knees, well, you're not going to do that. So you have to find something that doesn't cause great irritation for you. If you want to exercise in a group, you could do that in your own home and join other people and hold each other accountable, or you might be better in a group setting. It's okay to try a few different things and find out what works for you. And I also want to remind you, is just because a program works for you for this part of your balance or this part of your balance journey, it doesn't mean that it's the program that can get you to the next step. In other words, there has to be a program that continues to modify with you. You can't just do your sheet of paper and expect it to benefit you beyond a few weeks. In fact, I would tell you that if you're doing the same exercise for longer than 2 weeks, you probably lost its benefit for improving your balance after that point, because you should be moving to something slightly more intelligent, slightly more challenging, which is why our program slowly moves along with you as you perform better, so that we can stay within that training threshold. So the right fit for most people, or what they have joy in and what is entertaining, because joy plus entertainment always equals sustainment. If you like it, if it's fun, you'll do it, because we do what we want. We never do what we should. So I'm going to take a small pause there, because I think my next slide gets into, the broader scope of a bunch of different things that we can do to decrease your fall risk. I want to see if there's any questions real quick. And so I'm going to pull up the chat. So if you do have a question, please put it in the chat. If not, then I'll move forward. I'll give you guys like 30 seconds, and then we'll kind of move forward if there's no burning questions there. Bueller. I think we're good then. Luke, am I missing anything?
Not that I can see.
Perfect. So I'll just move on to the next one then. So now let's talk about fall prevention in its total. So I just talked about how to improve your balance, because balance is the single greatest thing that you can do to decrease your fall risk. Now we're going to talk about all the other behaviors that you can do that you have control over. So I love to talk about these, and there's a 3 gold bar status. This actually comes from my Australian colleagues. I'm actually speaking at the National Australian Conference actually tonight. I forgot that's coming up at 7 p.m. And so here's how: 1 bar means that we have a great study that says it could work. 2 bars means that we have multiple studies that say that it could work, and they're pretty aligned, but they're maybe not the same. And then 3 bars means that we know this works. So this allows you to prioritize, well, what might work and what might not. So first off, what works in the community? Well, we know that balance training, whether it's in the group or home setting, improves balance and decreases fall risk, full stop. On general, we decrease fall-related medical claims by 35%. And whatever program you can get to, it'll be fairly equivocal there, as long as you're doing an evidence-based fall prevention that actually works on balance. Like I said, matter of balance does fear of falling a little bit different. Really interesting is voluntary reactive step training, which means that, hey, I'm going to tell you how to move. Well, the problem with telling people how to move is then you're thinking about your movement again. And thinking about your movement's not reflexive. So what we found is that there's little evidence of thinking about your balance improving your balance. But there is a small study that showed some impact, but the impact wasn't balance, it was fall frequency. In other words, what they were doing is they were creating awareness of trip hazards and of balance hazards, and people started to avoid those. It's not that their balance got any better. Home safety modifications is another one where we have decent evidence for, with a very big caveat. Having a bunch of grab bars installed in your house and removing your throw rugs has never been shown to decrease fall risk. And there's a very practical reason why. If you remove all dangers from your home, number one, you're removing the stimulus that would maintain health. We can get into that another time. But number two is you may not use those home modifications effectively or safely. So the combination of modifications and a professional, usually an occupational therapist, who get the modifications and then tells you how to use them safely, that's when you actually have benefit. Simply adding grab bars is not enough. Having your first cataract removed has a great reduction in fall risk on a smaller study, but the second one didn't decrease fall risk, which was interesting to me. So if you have cataracts, please get at least one fixed. Multifocal glasses or bifocals, we've always known that increases fall risk for multiple reasons, because when you look down on a bifocal, it makes anything at the foot distance almost unseeable. So you can't see trip hazards. So then you tend to have people look down with their head. Well, we already established that when you look down with your head, your inner ear doesn't know where gravity is, and so it increases fall risk. And looking at your feet actually is a bad pattern in general. Also going downstairs or going upstairs, multifocal glasses. What this means is that if you wear bifocals, you shouldn't be wearing them when you move. Full stop. You should not be wearing bifocals while you're moving. And by wearing normal glasses when you're moving, it decreases fall risk. There's an intriguing study that just happened that they reproduced this, and there's a star here for a big reason. Is they found that initially, when people stopped wearing multifocal glasses, it increased fall risk. And we were like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Here's what happened. We told them that the glasses were a danger. If you remove the danger, then your risk goes down. Well, then suddenly they had an increased mobility before their balance improved. And so their balance was the same the day they took off the glasses, but their activity level went up, which exposed them to more risk. So what happened is initially they had a higher frequency, and then as their balance got better from moving more into balance training, then it went back down. And this is a great cautionary tale that confidence can be a wonderful tool if used correctly, but confidence can also drive us to have stupid behaviors. There's great research that says if you have your medications reconciled, in other words, take a box, throw all your medications in them, all your vitamins and all your supplements as well, and bring them to your doctor so he can see or she can see all the things that you're taking, or bring them to your pharmacist. And this is really important because there's a lot of medications that increase fall risk that your doctor doesn't know you're taking, or interactions with things that can increase risk that that individual doesn't know about. And this is such a big issue. When I was doing home health, more than 50% of the patients I saw that I got a list of medications from the doctor or hospital, it did not match the medications that were actually being taken in the home, which means that your doctor doesn't have all the knowledge of what you're taking enough to help you and guide you in that process. If you have foot pain, get it fixed. It'll decrease your fall risk. Psychoactive drugs. There are some medications that we might take for mood or sleep as a young adult that we should stop taking as an older adult because their side effects go up as we age. And so if you're on medications for mood or sleep, I would ask that you have a reasonable conversation with your doctor. Is this the right medication for me? Is there something that we might do differently as I age or as the side effects get up? And I always like to say this: managing more than one fall risk factor is always better. And there's a lot of studies that say simply doing one thing on its own isn't enough anyway, which is why at Nymbl we do balance training and we have education on decreasing your fall risk, talking to your doctor, having your vision checked, having your medications reconciled, because you have to take care of a bunch of things to decrease fall risk. If you're fortunate to live in residential care, what you're going to see is there's a lot of similarities. In other words, doing more than one thing, right, increases the probability. This is really interesting. Vitamin D supplementation has shown a strong decrease in fall frequency with a really big caveat. As long as you're vitamin D deficient. If you don't have a vitamin D deficiency, then giving you more vitamin D does not decrease your risk. In fact, it increases your risk, which is why the United States no longer recommends vitamin D supplementation for everybody, because we found that that recommendation increased falls. Medication review, and then, of course, physical therapy, exercises, as long as you have a dual task. The compliant floors, I love this one. So there was a study done in Canada where they thought, well, if people had floors that were softer, if they fell on, they would break their bones left. Yeah, but a soft floor is also harder to balance on. So injury rate went down, but fall frequency went up, and they balanced each other out, and they had the same number of falls. Anyway, so I hope that's helpful for you to understand that number one, balance is a reflex, and you have to do balance training to improve balance. That you should talk to your doctor about other risk factors, have your vision checked, have your medications looked at, and try to really take a dynamic approach of you have to train the brain and the body together. That can be done in multiple ways. We would love to help you at Nymbl. If that's not the right solution, please find a balance class. But if your balance instructor tells you to think about your balance, then leave. Because thinking about your balance cannot improve it. You have to be distracted while you're moving to improve balance skills. Anyway, so I know I probably went a little bit long, but that was a pleasure to go through that content. I'll go ahead and stop sharing and see if we have any questions from there. Other than that, we'll kind of go. So, Gretchen, any questions on your side?
Well, I found I've listened to you before, and you're always very engaging and informative. And there certainly is a lot we can do
Yes.
to improve our situation, and that's very encouraging. Because I think a lot of older adults feel as if, well, I'm aging, I'm going to fall, it's inevitable, there's nothing I can do about it. And that's just so inaccurate. And I think you do a tremendous job in letting us know that there are so many things out there for us that we have control over.
Right.
That's going to improve the quality of our life, that will strengthen our balance. And the fascination with the idea of the body-brain connection, I think is just marvelous. And that was one of the reasons why, I went ahead and enrolled in the program that you have. And I think it's really wonderful, especially that we can get it in our own homes now with the winter months coming up, and staying home because the inclement weather. You can continue building your balance and becoming stronger in that, even if the weather outside is crazy. And now here we are in December, and it's 70. Hello. Yeah, where are we really? Are we in Hawaii or what? And but we know the bad weather's coming.
Right.
And this is a marvelous way to, within the confines of your own home, to, on a consistent basis, have control over our balance and improve it each and every day. So I thank you so much for that.
You're welcome, Gretchen. It's actually really intriguing. I kind of previewed a little bit of our New Zealand study. Here's the amazing part about it is we found that if someone does 4 to 11 days of balance training on the platform, their decrease in fall-related medical claims was 28%. So it's not like you have to do an incredible amount. You don't even have to do this forever. You just have to start working on your balance to get to that next stage of balance. If you did more than 12 days, it was 35%. If you did 24 days, it was only 36%. In other words, balance training happens really quickly. The balance reflex can be trained really quickly. If you work on strength, it takes 6 weeks before you grow a single muscle fiber. And that's why we started with the reflex, because everyone can improve their balance reflex all the way from chair-bound to Olympic aging. And I really appreciate the comment that it's about the things that you can do today. right? Like you could literally start doing Nymbl balance training right now after this call within 10 minutes, and you would be on that journey to decrease your fall risk. You don't have to wait 3 months later to get a class sometime, next summer.
Excellent. Luke, do we have any questions in the chat?
No questions in the chat.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay, I'm going to get my video on. All right. Well, thanks, Nathan, for sharing this novel approach to reducing the risk of falling in a fun and convenient way. And personal testimony, it is a lot of fun. I know you've had people enrolled in your program that say, oh, can we do it more than 10 minutes?
True.
Because it is so much fun, but no, the guideline is 10 minutes only, and it's progressive. And I like the feedback that you get too from your program. So it's not like you're following the dual exercises and then you don't know really how you're doing. There is a constant feedback that helps you stay engaged. So I really appreciate that. And I mentioned, that this is a wonderful way to stay active and stay in control of improving your balance through the months where we have inclement weather. I mean, that I think is really key. And another thing too is for folks, even if it's not a weather issue, if you are traveling, you go to your family over the holidays. If you're enrolled in a class, well, if you're out of state or something like that, you can't get to your class. This comes with you. If you have your phone or your tablet, you can, no matter where you are, continue on that journey of better balance. So that's another really wonderful aspect of your program. Still no questions? We'll move on. Luke, what's going on there?
No questions, Gretchen. You can move on.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Nathan, for your wonderful presentation. We love having you here and sharing your expertise and your knowledge. It's really been wonderful to see you again.
It's a
So
pleasure,
we hope everybody will be joining us next month for our year in review on Thursday, January 6th, starting at 10 o'clock. We'll be in the hearing room at the Philip S. Miller building in Castle Rock if you're comfortable enough in coming out to see us there. We're looking forward to telling you about the busy year we've had and the exciting goals we've set for next year. And meeting flyers will be going out about a week before. So please consider that. And Luke, if we could put up our contact slide, there we go. Remember now our meetings are recorded so that you can view Nathan's presentation again, as well as previous presentations by visiting our webpage, mydugcoseniorlife.com, or liking us on our Facebook page, My Doug Co Senior Life, or visiting us on our YouTube channel as well. Nathan gave us a lot of information. I know we can't get it all the first time around. So looking at that presentation again will be very, very helpful, and inviting others to join you in viewing that presentation. You may also email us at scdc.colorado@gmail.com with your comments and ideas for future programming, or to sign up to receive our monthly electronic newsletter called First Friday Update. That'll be going out tomorrow. It will give you some additional information about what's going on in the community. I know there's some volunteering opportunities that may be of interest to you. So if you sign up for our electronic newsletter, you'll get that directly to your email address, and you can share that as well with others. In closing, we'd like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah or a Happy Kwanzaa, and much happiness, good health, and prosperity in the new year. And as always, stay healthy and stay connected. Bye-bye.